What is up, everybody? This is Shane at Fret Zealot. Today we've got a pedal demo and review coming your way. We're going to be looking at the Maestro line and checking out the new Revival Maestro pedals that have come out. For those of you who don't know, Maestro is a legacy effects brand going all the way back to the early 60s. They entered the market with a classic Fuzz that took over. Then the company continued to exist for a while. I think it went away at a certain point, and then in the last few years, the brand came back under a new ownership. They got bought by Gibson, and Gibson brought back the Maestro line. So these are a modern take on vintage classics. The Maestro pedals are known primarily for their original fuzz that was used by people like the Rolling Stones on Satisfaction. And now we get to relive that legacy with a newly released version of the Maestro line featuring more modern type features, but also a true homage to the classic Maestros. And that's what you get with this line here. We've got the 5 original Maestro pedals that came out, all hooked up, and we're going to be playing through them for you right now. So some things to know about all of these pedals, what they have in common: they all have sort of the same style and closure. They use a kind of unique wedge shape, which is a very cool ergonomic feel. Kind of a classic, but also a bit updated with this slight sort of incline that they've got on their faces. And then each one has a different custom faceplate with different colors and also sort of different graphics on it. They all have the same control configuration, 3 knobs with a toggle switch and a foot switch. A couple of these also have internal trimming controls that you can open them up and actually make adjustments on the inside too. They all have these really cool LED indicators as well. I'll just turn on a couple of them. It's the triple flag LEDs, and that is your indicator light for your pedals. They all light up together, and it's sort of like the classic triple horn. It looks like 3 like trumpets that are red, yellow, and blue for the Maestro logo. They all have 9-volt DC jacks, but also battery compartments, so you can power these off of batteries. And important to note, they're all analog. So starting to get a feel for what Gibson and what Maestro had in mind for reintroducing this line. Keep it updated, but also keep it classic. These are all analog effects that are sort of in the, I will call it like standard plus range. Like they're not just a basic run-of-the-line pedal, but they're not boutique pedals either. They're sort of striking a middle ground there with some straightforward pedal designs with a little bit of spice added to them. I'll get to that as we get into each pedal. We have all the pedals hooked up in a pedal board right now, so we get to just play with all of them, and I'm really excited about having this Maestro exclusive board, brand loyal. It's all of the effects from their original release in the order of fuzz, distortion, then we have the overdrive, chorus, delay. So we picked a standard pedal board configuration, hooked them all up, and I'll start with them one at a time, and then we'll get into more sounds from there. So let's look at the fuzz. Fuzz is a classic. This is a good place to start because this is where Maestro sort of got their start. So we're revisiting the original Maestro classic. Here's my clean sound. And we're using this really cool ESP LTD 256 guitar with humbuckers. So that's our clean sound. What happens when we turn on the distortion, fuzz? Right off the bat, a pretty fun sounding fuzz. I'm getting like a little bit of the Siamese Smashing Pumpkins vibe from this fuzz already. We have it set up with the tone sort of in the middle. Let's dial in some more tone and get the full frequency range. Even with the tone midway, I'm getting a lot of high frequency response. It sounds pretty nice and aggressive, but I want to hear what it sounds like when I dial back the tone a bit. A little bit more mellowed out, less shrill sounding. So good work with the tone because you can get sort of the range of responses that you want that way. And then we get into the mode switch, which is right now set to the classic mode. And it does have a vintagey sound, maybe more true to the original Maestro. But then we flip it up to modern, and then we get to hear what the new Maestro Fuzz sound is. To me, like on face value, the modern one sounds more like it has more clarity and focus, but a little bit less like crazy tones. I like the sound of the classic fuzzes, and I think a lot of people do love classic fuzzes because of the highly irregular sounds that you get from vintage transistors. So this gives you both, because I would use this modern sound for maybe more of a lead part where the clarity is going to be important to me, because I've got the levels up pretty high, and this thing it's a bit more dialed in, and I kind of like that. So it gives you a few different options for how to work with this fuzz. If you want it to be the modern style with a little bit more clarity, or if you sort of want it to have this all out, fuzzed out sound. That's back to the modern. So a lot less distortion, but a bit more focused in the sound. So I like the optionality that we're getting from this fuzz. All right, I've turned off the fuzz and we're gonna be moving on to the next pedal. We do gotta talk about all of them. So I can't stay on the fuzz forever, even though I love it. But here's the Invader Distortion, and this is going to be, in my opinion, the other main sort of dynamic pedal option between the line. We're gonna also get to see the Ranger Overdrive and talk about what that has to offer. But now we're into the distortion world, where we're not, this is different than a fuzz in a few different ways. And for those of us that don't know, fuzz just is a different type of sound that could be characterized as more like hairy sounding. I mean, it is really the way it sounds, it's fuzzed out. Whereas distortion is going to be a bit more like crunch and compression. So the best way to understand it is just to hear it, but we are looking at sort of two different styles of distortion now. So the Invader Distortion is the red one because it's red hot, and it's, again, an all analog distortion effect with two different sound options. Gate. So a gate is a really good thing to have with a distortion pedal, so I'm really glad that this is the direction that Maestro went here. We've got basically a ton of distortion coming out of this, and this one I got the gain up all the way and the level dialed back so we can hear the distortion sound without it being extra loud. And then the tone up all the way to give us the full sound. But if you bring the tone back, it sort of tightens up. So I mean, great for any sort of distorted lead. This going right into a clean amp is even going to give you pretty much enough distortion to cover all the rock and roll ground that you need. What's nice though is that I can get these sounds with the noise gate. So what happens when I turn it off? It's just a little bit noisier. You turn the noise gate off and you won't have that removing the ambient hiss from there. So it's really nice to have that option. That said, turning off the noise gate gives it a little bit more character and response. At least that's to my ear, because we're not changing up or taking away any of the signal. We're just leaving it wide open, which is usually the default configuration. You know, pedals have noise, so it's something to expect. But if you were to use this pedal with, say, the gain dialed back down halfway, everything more in the middle position, it's not noisy, and that's a perfectly great distortion. It sounds pretty organic at this middle range, like a natural organic sounding distortion. You bring the gain back even more. And now we're just getting somewhat of a bite sound. So there's my clean, right? Still pretty hot even at the low gain, so you know I can turn it down even more. And this is nice for if you just want like a more subtle classic rock. Trying to like on the edge of being really distorted. And then you get the range all the way up. I guess that's why they call it all the way into that sort of red hot territory. And that is when that gate is going to come into play, because now I flip that switch and the hissing sound is gone. So I would use the gate if I was inclined to play with more distorted tones for leads on this pedal, the range or overdrive with the gain all the way up. It's super helpful for anybody that plays metal, especially. You'll see noise gates on a lot of metal rigs, and this gives you a pretty insane distortion with the built-in gate, so you're already a lot of the way there to getting what you want if you're playing metal, but then it dials all the way back. So with the all analog design, this can actually give you quite a good range from like classic distortion, which is just a little bit of grit, all the way up to a pretty insane sound where you're using the gate and making it kind of go all out. So that one's the Invader Distortion. And then we've got the third in the list of Maestro distortion effects or dynamic effects. These are effects that use volume and gain to get different sounds, but just doing it in different ways. So let's talk about the overdrive. Overdrive is probably the easiest way to describe the overdrive is maybe as the most transparent of the bunch, meaning that it gives you gain boost, it gives you volume boost, and it gives you distortion, but in a way that is overdriving your amp. So you've taken it, say you've used some fuzz, so you already have one of the other two pedals, the red one or the yellow one, and then you want to use the overdrive to do what the pedal says. Go over the top, overdrive your amp, get even more distortion, you know, increase your signal. And so for that reason, this pedal can function, possibly has the widest range of uses, but does it in a more transparent way. So let's just get into the basic setup of this pedal with all of the knobs midway through, 50%. That's good. Okay, then we add the Ranger overdrive. So my tone is going from, like very clean and almost, it sounds good, but then in comparison to having the overdrive, it's just a little bit empty without the sound. So I like this as a boost, but also a way of just adding so much color to the tone where it feels way more full. I think this would sound great, if you were recording and you wanted to add more saturation and color to your guitar tone. I'll start by adding the tone, getting the tone up all the way. That's starting to sound really present, probably pretty harsh on the highs, so that's not necessary, but it does give you a range of tones to work with. If you dial it back, it darkens up. Okay, so then we'll see what the gain range is like. So I've got it midway up. Sustain for days. It's got tons of sustain. So what I'm getting is a ton of presence and maintaining a lot of clarity, but with the gain up all the way, it's giving me a lot of boost and a lot of overdrive without it being too distorted. So compared to the fuzz and the distortion, it's really not changing the sound of the guitar as much. And don't get me wrong, it definitely is adding distortion of its own kind in terms of overdrive, but it's not purpose-built for making your tone sound distorted. It's an overdrive pedal that you're going to use to add more boost, more signal, more color, some of the things that we've sort of noticed before while putting this through its paces. So with the gain up all the way, you've got tons and tons of volume. You can start to use that headroom and get kind of shape your tone more so than shaping the distortion. This one has a high and low switch. Let's see what that does. So that's a bit of a gain switch. It's just giving you extra overdrive if you need it. I'll keep this on low and then put the gain up higher. And I'm really liking how it's giving me this nice volume boost. Like you could even take the gain knob, dial it back all the way down and add a little bit more level or volume to this. And then it's gonna be more of a boost at that type of setting. I like that you can get a bit of subtlety with this, where maybe if you're playing in a band and you want just the slightest amount of boost to change where you sit in the mix, this is a really good type of pedal to use. This is a really common way to use an overdrive pedal, where you're just going to want to basically fatten up your tone, juice it, add color, however you want to describe it. The overdrive is going to do that for you, but it's also going to do a fun job of sort of amplifying other effects that you're using and making your guitar sound more full and bright, or however you really want it to stand out. This will sort of just boost that type of feeling. So it's fun to combine an overdrive with something like a fuzz, where you're then making the fuzz stand out even more. So here's my fuzz tone. And it's kind of like that classic, but a little bit thin sounding. So then I'll add the overdrive. And now we've got these different gains sort of working together, where we're fuzzing it and then we're boosting it. And that's what's fun about working with all these cool pedals together. Okay, so we're gonna move on from the land of distortion, which is the first 3 pedals on this board, and start looking at the other kinds of effects that Maestro decided to go with. They did a good job of covering sort of the main pillars, with the focus on being on dynamic effects. We've got the Fuzz, the Invader Distortion, and the Ranger Overdrive to sort of give you that front of your board situation totally figured out. There was really nothing left on the table in terms of their different distortion offerings. They kind of covered the gambit of what you would need. But then they also were sure to include some modulation effects. And I think the approach here was really great because they kind of stuck with the same vision for all of their effects, which is modern updates to a classic. So for that reason, we get an analog chorus and an analog delay. So here's the Comet Chorus in blue. And the chorusing effect gives the sound of multiple guitars sort of playing together with different things happening in terms of their phases from one another. It's got your depth, mix, and the third control, speed. So let's see how it sounds sort of just in the default configuration. Very usable sounding chorus, sort of right off the bat. And I like how you just sort of get that archetypical chorus sound. Like that's the sound I really think of when I think of chorus. So right away, they just want to nail the classic chorus sound, but then give you some options to go above and beyond. Here's what the depth control does. It will actually make that chorusing warble that you hear go much deeper. Just when I turn that up, here's how it sounds at 50%. And then you start to get a sense as I bring it down. We're sort of losing the wave that's in there, or making it more noticeable. Leaving it at 50% versus like all the way up doesn't make a ton of a difference to me, but you probably don't want it to go overboard on this setting because then it'll really start to just sound like its own synthy type of thing. So here's the speed, and that's going to actually change the speed of that chorus wave that we're hearing in there. So all the way up, it starts to sound almost kind of like a choppy tremolo, or like a sine wave tremolo. So I can imagine using that for some like sort of single type of sounds, but for the most part, I like this setting actually on the lower side of things, where it's slower. And then increasing that depth, you get this slow pulsating, kind of ambient. So pro tip for choruses, if you have one, try messing around with the speed and making it slower, and then you can set the depth, towards the middle or the higher part. So then the mix knob is really blending your straight through signal with the affected signal. So right now with the blend, with this mix knob in the middle, we've got half of the sound is just actually as if the effect is off. And mixing the chorus sound with your dry signal is really a key component to the chorus effect. If I turn this mix all the way back, it's almost like the pedal's off. There's probably still some amount of change happening, but it's mostly just my clean signal. this middle part, somewhere 50-50, but then if I go all the way up, it starts to become more focused on that chorus waveform. So there's a pretty nice balance you can strike, or you could sort of go in the extreme direction and make your sound very wavy sounding, which is useful depending on the type of situation. Then, so we kind of, like, it starts with the classic chorus sound, but then it goes a little bit into the next generation type of feel with this mode switch here. Right now we're on Earth, which is just this classic kind of chorus sound, but then the Orbit, we'll turn that on and hear what the difference is like. What I notice most from this is that the wave sound is coming in and out a little bit more. And what this actually does is adds a little bit of volume tremolo to the chorus that goes at the same frequency. So what it kind of does is as the chorus wave comes, it gets a little bit louder too, which sort of gives you the sense of a real like rotary speaker. As it's facing you, it gets a little bit louder, and then as it goes away, it's a little bit quieter. So it accentuates the chorus using a little bit of volume tremolo, and that kind of takes it into orbit. I guess that's the intent there. That's why it's called the orbit mode. But if you just want to keep it simple, you don't want the volume tremolo in there, then you just keep it on Earth. But having that option is actually pretty nice. I think it would probably be useful in a lot of situations, and it's kind of giving you a 2-for-1 in terms of the sort of effect it can give. Also, when you turn that mix up, it's really it really lives in there. I think this is a really high quality sounding chorus effect. With the analog circuitry inside of it, it sounds very good and responds to an amp and pickups beautifully. So this pedal is really standing out to me as just sounding especially nice. And I like the sound of the chorus that it gives. So I would definitely put this one up there with a lot of the standard analog choruses available. It definitely meets my mark of approval for a nice sounding chorus, and it gives you the options that you would normally look for from a classic chorus. Now we're on to the last one. This is the Discoverer delay, and this is one of the more exciting ones to look at because delays are vast in what they can do, but they all kind of create the same beautiful effect. So it's really cool to see different takes on this. And this, again, a fully analog delay. So we're not going to get any sort of strange modern delay types of setups with this. I'm kind of expecting a bit of a classic sounding delay. So let's see what happens. All the knobs at noon are 50%. So kind of a similar first reaction to the Comet Chorus, like right off the bat. Maestro is giving you just sort of an archetypical, good sounding delay. Again, very usable. You can really hear the trails clearly, so that's one thing I'm also noticing, how clear all the delay signal sounds. This might be more delay than people, this is like very noticeable amount of delay. Sometimes you would want it to be a little bit more subtle, like turn back the delay. Okay, so the delay knob itself, this is gonna be the delay speed. So at the lowest settings, it'll give you like a slap back, very fast. I like that because it adds a bit of just like, it's sort of like a reverberation or like a roomy sound to it where the sound is just like reflecting everywhere, but in a sort of subtle way. I like the slapback sound in a lot of situations, so keeping the delay down to that range, sort of in the 1 to 2 area, is good. Then we get up to the middle, and that's where we were starting. And that's where you're really getting into like, I'm slathering it in delay kind of territory, and that's a really great sound. And you want it to sound nice and clear in those types of situations, so this pedal is definitely nailing that. And then let's just see, the main limit to all delays is how long of a delay they can support. So let's see what the max delay setting is like. So it's almost maybe around a second of delay, which is plenty really, especially for any analog delay. This is about what you're going to expect. And just no shortage of ambiance. No shortage of ambiance with that delay. The sustain, let's see what this control does. So with all the effects midway up with no sustain, it's repeating the note or the signal one time. You hear it just repeat once. Then we turn up the sustain. It's basically, this is on other pedals, this would be called the feedback control. Basically adding repetitions to the delay, which creates a more ambient effect. And as you're playing things out, they will repeat longer, so you'll hear the recurring notes longer. And then we can turn the sustain up all the way and hear how that. It's like the pedal's alive constantly, like it's doing things even when I'm not. And that's because the signal, almost all of it's getting fed back into the delay. So it just kind of repeats forever, even if there's just a little bit of noise in it. It's repeating and repeating. That's called self-oscillating, where this pedal gets almost pretty much to the point of self-oscillating, so you gotta be careful about noise, but it's kind of great to have because you could really start to get into a new sonic territory when it gets this saturated, or when, in this case, when you're using all the sustain, where you're just gonna have these notes ringing out almost indefinitely. So that's a pretty nice update feature to a classic delay pedal, where you can get these sort of blip blops in the back going almost indefinitely, which fits the whole vibe. You know, throughout the whole board, we've got a little bit of a space theme going, and the Discover delay really fits right in, but it also does let you discover some new sonic ground in terms of what you can do with a delay pedal, because you can get the sustain knob all the way up and do some self-oscillating. But we haven't even gotten to the mode switch on this one. This one's got mod off and mod on, so we're going to add a modulation. So let's get that turned on. So this is adding an actual modulation to the delay, meaning that the repeated notes are changing their sort of character as they repeat. So what is this doing exactly? It's adding a little bit of modulation into the delay pattern. Not exactly sure what it is, but it sounds a little bit like flangey or chorusy. So it's giving you just an extra bit of modulation to this delay sound, making things sort of evolve as they repeat, like some sort of shifting filter, basically. I don't know if it's chorusing. I gotta imagine it's some sort of like phase or flange type effect that's happening in there, where you're just getting a little bit of 2-for-1 modulation out of this delay pedal. The delays are coming through and having just a little bit of extra like character to them. I'm getting some combinations of different modulations out of this one delay pedal. So again, doing a really nice job of making it go just a little bit above and beyond what you would expect from a classic delay by giving you the option to add a little bit of modulation in there. And that's sort of consistent among all these pedals. They really take the classic feel of what you would expect from the effect and add a little bit extra to it, which has been a really successful strategy in my eyes from Maestro, because each of these pedals, they kind of are like a little universe to explore, each in their own right, where you can do more than you expect from one pedal. But then you put it all together and you've got a really sort of sophisticated line. Like this set of pedals, all 5 of them running on a board, gives you really everything that you would want from a basic set of effects, while also doing it with exceptionally high sound quality. These are all analog units with true bypass switches and give you sort of no-nonsense classic effects tones that you can really take into new skies every time you play. Let's try out some different tone combinations. Right now I've got the Invader Distortion, the Overdrive, and the delay all coming together for a silky lead, smooth sound. Distortion with chorus. Get another. Thanks so much for checking out this pedal review. Rocking the Maestro pedals has been really fun. They are available on FretZealot.com and they've been very popular. So we're excited to be showing them to you today. Have you tried any of these Maestro pedals before? Let us know. Do you still have any questions about them? They are pretty deep, so if there's something I didn't touch on in this demo, please shout it out in the comments. We'd be happy to answer any questions. This pedal, I'm excited to see how they do if they continue to make headway in the industry as a new returning legacy brand, start to see what Maestro does if they start making their way onto any pro boards and things like that. I'm excited about these pedals. I think they offer quite a lot at the price point, and compared to other pedals in the similar price range, I give these a big nod for having really, really great sound quality, but also very fun features that make them go above and beyond what you would expect from a standard analog effect. So kudos to Maestro. I love the updated look and feel of these pedals. The sound is tried and true, but the experience is unique and fun. Also, the LED just makes me happy. It's super fun to look at. I mean, these are great feeling stomps, and the whole experience of using the pedal is super fun. So let's jam. Thanks for watching.